What's up, guys? So today we're talking about tariffs, and I think this is a really important one and a really fun one to discuss because obviously, with the political landscape, Donald Trump was just elected, and one of his main economic policies was tariffs. He promised to impose strong tariffs. So we'll be able to understand what's the purpose of that and what are some of the consequences that happen to them. Along with that, we'll be able to apply how tariffs impact the economy as a whole. So, guys, today with this with this lesson, I want you to follow along with your student sheet that I've given you. Make sure to keep pace with me. Now, there's going to be times where I ask you to do something. I want you to pause the video so that way you have time to do those things and you're able to follow along and keep pace. So make sure you pause me on the video so you have time to work on whatever it is that you need to work on. Don't just let me keep rambling about stuff that you haven't understood yet because you are working on something that I've already moved on from. Along with that, make sure that you are watching this with a partner. So try to keep pace with a partner or a group. So that way, when there is opportunities to turn and talk, that you can do that with one another. So, guys, our bell ringer today is I want you to think about what were some of the trade barriers we discussed yesterday. We talked about international trade, and I want you to think about some of the trade barriers we discussed yesterday, and then I will meet you on the next slide. So, some of the trade barriers that we talked about, the first one that comes to my mind is embargoes, right? So, just basically refusing to trade with another country, essentially, where you it's a ban on selling and trading with another country. Quotas as well, so like limits on the quantity of a product that can be imported. And then lastly, tariffs, right? So a tariff is pretty simple. I think it's the most simple out of all of those. It's a tax on an imported good. Okay. And this can be specific, it can be a fixed fee per unit, or it can be ad valorem, which just means a percentage of a value of a certain product. Okay. And this is just a tax on an imported good. It's the government saying that if you decide to buy from another country, you're going to be taxed for it. So, what is the purpose of this? Well, number one, it protects domestic industry theoretically because if it's more expensive for me to buy and import goods, maybe I'm going to look elsewhere. Maybe I'm going to look inside my own country, and maybe since the imported goods, it's raised the price on those imported goods. Maybe there's a producer or an entity within the own country selling it for a pretty similar price, and I can get it quicker, and I can also be buying within my own country. Next one is to generate revenue for the government. I mean, like the government is literally getting money from these tariffs, right? And then last one is to punish or pressure other countries. So, like starting essentially a trade war, and this can be a really, really slippery slope that we're going to talk about here in a bit. But guys, the first thing I want us to talk about is there is a very strong misconception about tariffs, and that is that tariffs are directly on another country, and that's not the case. When I impose a tariff on a country, I'm not uh, actually taxing that country for exporting goods. What I'm doing is I am taxing the producer within my own country that is buying the export from the other country. Okay, and obviously that de incentivizes me to buy imports from other countries. So, for example, country A is country B is exporting to country A. They're exporting towels. And if a 20% tariff is added to towels, these towels that have been exported from country B into country B is not the one that is actually taxed. So they're not paying any money to country A for exporting these goods. What's happening is the producers within country A are the ones that are having to pay a fee. So it makes the good overall more expensive. Now, obviously, this does impact country B because it de incentivizes country A from buying exported goods from country B if there's a tariff. So, guys, what I want you to do is I want you to watch this video on the Smoot-Hawley tariff and the trade war that was started from that. There's some questions attached to it, so go ahead and read those so that way you know what you're looking for. And when you're done with that, you can go ahead and meet me on the next slide. So guys, what I want you to do now is turn and talk to your partner. And I want you to think about tariffs, right? So obviously, if we go back to this slide, right? So country A has imposed a tariff on country B's towels per se, right? So a 20% tariff is added to the price. And remember, this doesn't directly impact country B because they aren't having to pay a tariff or anything like that. The producers within country A that are buying towels from country B are the ones that are having to pay that tariff. So if producers are being charged more essentially to make a good, how does that impact the prices of these goods? And then how does that impact the consumer? Go ahead and pause me, turn and talk about it, and then meet me on the next slide. So obviously, these tariffs are going to raise the prices because if it costs more for a producer to make a good, we know this. We've been talking about this pretty much all class since we've started this 9 weeks. If it costs more for a producer to produce a good, they're going to pass that raised price on to consumers, right? So tariffs typically raise the price of imported goods, making them more expensive for consumers, right? If it costs me $10 to make a product, I'm probably going to charge 15, but now there's a tariff imposed to that product that I'm making. So now it costs me $13 to make it. So I'm probably not going to just keep it at $15. I'm going to want to raise the price to make this a similar profit. So now all of a sudden it's $18 to the consumer, right? And so going on to that impact on the consumers may pay higher prices for goods and services, which could reduce their purchasing power. And then along with that, think about domestic producers, and this is something that maybe you haven't thought of yet. Domestic producers could benefit from less competition. Obviously, that's kind of the point of it, is to benefit domestic producers, but also think about if a domestic producer sees that, hey, I have significantly less competition, they don't want to go buy from these foreign entities because they don't want to pay those tariffs. So now all of a sudden I can really raise my prices. I can take advantage of these tariffs. Okay. So guys, what I want you to do is I want you to turn and talk with your partner. You can pause me, but I want you to talk about, can you think about any goods or services that would be most affected by tariffs? And go ahead and pause me, and then I'll meet you on the next slide. So, guys, one of the consequences that we have to talk about is the reactions to it, right? Because even though if we go back to the country A and country B, even though country B isn't directly paying any tariffs, they are pretty much directly impacted by those tariffs. Because if I am de-incentivized as country A, as a producer in country A, to buy imported goods from country B, then that hurts country B because that's less revenue coming in for them. That's less trade for them. So when one country imposes a tariff, usually that same country will respond by imposing their own tariff. They want to, uh, essentially, they're saying, hey, if you're going to hurt me and hurt our economy with these tariffs, I'm going to do the same to you. So the impact of this is trade wars, and trade wars can reduce international trade. It can increase prices and hurt both domestic and foreign industries, as we saw with that Smoot-Hawley tariff. Pretty rough. So this is where the WTO comes in, and this is the World Trade Organization. Essentially, what this is, you can think of it like the International Trade Police. It's an international body that monitors and enforces global trade rules. Its purpose is to resolve trade disputes, so like it serves as like an arbitrator essentially. It also promotes free trade by reducing tariffs and other trade barriers, and then it also ensures that trade is fair and rules based. So again, essentially the international trade police, you can think of them as. So guys, what I want you to do now is I want you to turn and talk to your partner, your group. Why do you think it's important for there to be an organization like the WTO? How does it help maintain fairness in international trade? Go ahead and pause me and talk about that, and then I'll meet you on the next slide. So, guys, there's now a video on the WTO. What I want you to do is I want you to watch that video where they just explain what is the WTO, what's its purpose, and how does it serve it in internationally. So go ahead and pause me, watch that video, and then I'll meet you on the next slide. All right, guys. So after that video, you should pretty much fully understand like what is the WTO's purpose. Okay, and I mentioned earlier one of the first things I mentioned was Trump's imposed tariffs on foreign entities and specifically on China. He seems to be directly targeting China. And so, what I want you to do is, I want you to read this article that I have for you. And it's really, really interesting to read about Trump and China's trade war and how it impacts us as consumers. So, I have some questions for you to answer on your student sheet as you're reading this article. And I really do find this article rather interesting. And so, pretty much for the rest of the class, we're going to be talking about tariffs in the context of Trump. So go ahead and pause me, read that article, and answer those questions, and then I will meet you on the next slide. So again, talking about Trump's tariffs. So especially during the 2024 cycle, one of Donald Trump's biggest economic plans was tariffs. And his reasonings were exactly what we've been talking about this whole time. It's their purpose of it, right? He wants to boost domestic production. And Trump has imposed or proposed implementing new tariffs on foreign goods, particularly from China, because he considers them to be particularly an unfair trade partner. Now, his focus is protecting U.S. manufacturing jobs, so he wants to make sure that jobs are kept within the country. Obviously, if people are buying more goods within the country, that's going to be more jobs for people. And he also wants to reduce the U.S. trade deficit. So we talked about deficit not too long ago. And he wants to reduce that trade deficit to where we are exporting more than we are importing. So he calls for reciprocal tariffs where the U.S. would impose tariffs equal to those charged by other countries on American exports. And this is considered America First approach. This is what he calls it. This is what is typically called the America First approach, where you're trying to protect U.S. jobs, you're trying to protect U.S. manufacturers, and the tariffs are framed as a method to protect American workers and industry, particularly in the in manufacturing, steel, and agriculture. So some of the key themes of Trump's campaign and the tariffs is obviously economic nationalism. Again, reducing the reliance on global supply chains, so reducing that trade deficit and reducing the reliance on imports. He argues that tariffs could bring back the U.S. jobs and lead to wage growth in certain sectors. Next, trade war concerns. So a lot of critics have said, "Hey, Trump's tariffs, like they're they could cause a pretty rough trade war, which then will increase prices for you as a consumer, because this disrupts trade. It, hinders producers from buying from other countries, which then makes it more expensive for them to produce. And of course, they pass that on to us. So, what's the impact here domestically? There are some short term benefits for sure, uh, especially like US production companies being able to see some benefits. But long term, I think that I don't think that, but long term, higher consumer prices and potential job losses could offset those gains. That's what a lot of critics say. And let's go on to looking at a difference of opinion. Okay, so I've always kind of wanted to present you with the information and then have you form an opinion based on what we see. And these two videos, guys, one of them is from a more liberal side of the media, and then another one is from a more conservative side of the media, right? So you got MSNBC, and then you have Fox News, and obviously, if you are pay attention to any political whatsoever, MSNBC is pretty notoriously a left-leaning um, news source, and then Fox News is definitely a right-leaning news source as well, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to watch these two videos. And they're talking about the same thing. They're talking about Trump's tariffs and its impact on on us as an economy and us as a consumer. I want you to notice the difference in how they discuss these tariffs. So I want you to pause me right now. I want you to watch those videos and really pay attention to the difference. And then I will meet you on the next slide. So, guys, last thing, um, pretty crazy stuff though. The last two videos, right? You can see the discrepancy. You can see the rhetoric that's put out there by both sides. Um, it's pretty apparent that you need to do a good job of sorting out what news sources do you trust. Because both sides are going to be able to kind of twist around their rhetoric how they want to. So it's really important for you as a citizen and um, as a future voter or a current voter to be able to sort and filter out, hey, what news sources can I rely on? What news sources can I trust? That's really, really important for you to filter um, as a citizen. Don't just believe everything that you see from clips on YouTube or clips on TikTok or whatever the case may be. I want you, and I strongly encourage you to really do your research and where you get your news. Look at multiple sources, right? Don't look at just one entity because there's possible, as you just see, it's a strong possibility that that source could be twisting its bias. So nothing more on that, guys. Last thing that we got is your exit slip, and I want you to give me your opinion here. So, in your opinion, based on the information presented today, based on what you've already known, is an American first economy. So, like, that idea that tariffs should be imposed, and the idea that this is benefiting U.S. industries and things like that, U.S. made jobs. Is it worth having the trade off of having consumer goods be more expensive due to tariffs? So, in your opinion, I'd like to know what you think about this. So, guys, thank you for joining me today, and make sure that you get that student sheet done and turned in, and then we're out of here. So thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.